Just got home from a grueling business trip, found my key wouldn't work, and a stranger opened my door. We sold your apartment. Your sister deserves it more than you anyway, my mom snapped. They had no idea about the secret clause I'd hidden. I arrived home after a grueling month-long business trip, expecting nothing more than a hot shower and a good night's sleep in my own bed. Instead, I found my key refusing to turn in the lock. My heart pounded as I tried again. And again. Nothing. A sickening chill spread through my chest. Had the landlord changed the locks by mistake? Was this some kind of break-in? I knocked, then pounded. Finally, the door opened, revealing a woman in her 60s. A complete stranger. Yes, she asked, her expression wary. Who are you? My voice was tight with confusion. What are you doing in my apartment? Her lips pursed. I think there's been a misunderstanding, dear. This is my apartment. I bought it 3 weeks ago. The air left my lungs. No, that's impossible, she sighed. I think you should talk to your family. A cold dread settled over me as I pulled out my phone. Mom. The phone rang twice before she answered, her voice too casual. Oh, sweetheart. You're back. How was the trip? Why is someone else living in my apartment? A pause, then a sigh. We had no choice. Your sister, she got into some trouble, and we had to help her. My grip on the phone tightened. What kind of trouble? Another pause. Then, soft, as if she thought it would lessen the blow, she owed some money, at a casino. The world blurred around me. You're telling me you sold my apartment to cover Jessica's gambling debts? We thought you'd understand, Mom said, her tone shifting to something defensive. You travel all the time. You barely use the place. And we needed to act fast, or they were going to hurt her. Blood roared in my ears. You had no right. We're family. The same old excuse. We have to look out for each other. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. No, Mom. You look out for Jessica. Always Jessica. I hung up before she could say another word. They had no idea what they had done. No idea about the legal clause I had included in the contract. No idea that the sale was, in fact, illegal. I wasn't just going to get my home back. I was going to make them pay. The beginning of the end. I stood in front of the building that used to be mine, staring up at the windows that once held my life. My throat was dry, my pulse hammering in my ears. I tried to take a deep breath, but it felt like I was inhaling glass. My apartment was gone. My home, the only place I had ever truly felt safe, sold behind my back. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms so hard it almost hurt. I needed proof. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my emails. I had kept everything, the contract, the mortgage statements, the notarized agreements. I swiped faster, my eyes darting over every attachment until I found it. The clause, a safety net I had insisted on when I first signed the contract. Any sale required my explicit, notarized approval. Without it, the transaction was void. My fingers tightened around the phone. Got you. I hit dial on Matt's number. Pick up, pick up, pick up. After 2 rings, he answered. Dude, it's 9 in the morning. What's on fire? My apartment, apparently, I snapped. Or at least it might as well be, because my parents just sold it without telling me. Silence. Then, a slow inhale. They did what? You heard me. I was pacing now, my free hand running through my hair as I tried to keep myself from punching the nearest wall. They forged my signature, Matt. Sold my place to cover Jessica's gambling debts. Matt swore under his breath. Please tell me you have something in the contract. I do. I opened the PDF and highlighted the clause. Explicit notarized approval. No exceptions. The sale is invalid. Another beat of silence. Then Matt let out a dark chuckle. Oh, that's beautiful. Tell me I have a case. Oh, you don't just have a case. He sounded almost giddy now. You have a nuclear bomb. Send me everything. Now. I forwarded the documents before he could finish speaking. My hands weren't shaking anymore. Now I had control. As I stood there, waiting for Matt's reply, memories came rushing back. Jessica had always been the golden child. The one who could do no wrong. I could already hear Mom's voice in my head, the same condescending tone she always used when she tried to justify their nonsense. Sweetheart, Jessica just needs a little more help than you. You've always been so independent. Independent. What she really meant was, we know you'll survive. So we'll keep sacrificing you for her. I thought of my 5th birthday, the bright red bicycle I had dreamed of for months. The one I barely had for a week before Jessica whined that she wanted it. And just like that, it was hers. You're the big sister. Let her have it. I thought of high school, the awards I brought home, the competitions I won. The way my parents barely glanced at my achievements because Jessica had just discovered she wanted to be a singer that week. I thought of university, how I worked 2 jobs to afford my tuition, while Jessica dropped out 3 times, blew through thousands of dollars, and still had my parents covering her every mistake. Every time, it was the same story. And now? They had taken my home. They had underestimated me. And that was their biggest mistake. First strike. My phone buzzed. Matt. We have a case. I exhaled slowly, a dangerous calm settling over me. Good. Let's make them regret this. I turned away from the building and headed straight to my car. Time to go see my parents. You have no idea what's coming. I didn't knock. I didn't hesitate. I simply pushed the door open and walked into my parents' house. Mom was sitting at the kitchen table, calmly sipping her tea as if she hadn't just committed fraud. Dad was on the couch, eyes glued to the television, completely at ease. And Jessica? She was sprawled out on the other couch, scrolling through her phone, looking as carefree as ever. The sight of them, calm, comfortable, completely unbothered, made my blood boil. Mom noticed me first. Sweetheart, you should have called. We weren't expecting you. Cut the act, Mom. Silence. Jessica glanced up, confused. Dad muted the TV. Mom pursed her lips in that familiar way, like she was about to feign innocence. Not this time. I tossed a folder onto the table. You want to explain this? Mom frowned. What is this? The contract for my apartment. I leaned in, hands pressed against the table. The one you illegally sold. Dad shifted uncomfortably. Now listen, No. You listen. My voice was sharp, unyielding. You forged my signature. You sold my home without my consent. You stole from me. Jessica let out a loud sigh, tossing her phone aside. Oh, please. You're being so dramatic. It's just an apartment. It's my apartment. I turned my glare on her. And you're the reason it's gone. She rolled her eyes. You travel all the time. You barely even live there. That's not the point. My voice rose, trembling with fury. You were drowning in debt because of your own choices, and instead of making you deal with it, they stole from me to bail you out. Again, Jessica scoffed, crossing her arms. They didn't steal. They helped. That's what family does. I let out a bitter laugh. Family helps. I shook my head, incredulous. Like when I helped cover your rent. Or when I paid off your last credit card debt. Or when I bailed you out of trouble years ago. Funny how family helping only works one way. Jessica's face darkened. That's different. No, it's not. My hand slammed against the table, making Mom flinch. You don't get to keep making mistakes and expect me to clean up after you. Not anymore. Mom inhaled sharply. Watch your tone. I turned to her, eyes burning. Watch my tone? Really? She gasped at my intensity. You stole from me, Mom. You forged my signature. You sold my home behind my back to fix her mistakes, and you want me to be polite. Dad sighed, rubbing his forehead. Look, we understand you're upset, but what's done is done. I smiled. And that's when they should have realized they were in trouble. No, Dad, I said, voice dangerously calm. Nothing is done. Because you clearly didn't read the contract. Jessica frowned. What? I slid a single sheet of paper across the table, tapping a highlighted section. The sale was illegal. Mom's face turned pale. That's not possible. Oh, but it is. I grinned. The contract required my notarized approval, which means the sale. It's void. And the buyer? He's pressing charges. Jessica sat up straight. What do you mean pressing charges? Without a word, I pulled out my phone and played a voice message from my lawyer, loud enough for the whole room to hear. We filed for fraud. The police will issue a warrant soon. Your parents will be served within 48 hours. Mom let out a sharp gasp. Dad's face drained of color. Jessica? She looked like she was about to faint. No, No, Jessica jumped up, shaking her head. You wouldn't do this to Mom and Dad. I stared at her, unflinching. I already did, and they'll have to face the consequences. Mom's voice trembled. Sweetheart, please, we didn't mean to. Save it. I grabbed my folder and turned toward the door. I'll see you in court. And with that, I walked out, leaving them to deal with the consequences of their own betrayal. I stepped outside into the cold night air, inhaling deeply as the noise inside faded behind me. The muffled shouts of my parents, the panicked screech of Jessica, the hushed whispers of stunned relatives, none of it mattered anymore. The chaos that had ruled my life for years was now their burden to carry. For the first time in a long time, I felt something dangerously close to peace. My hands still trembled slightly from the adrenaline, my heart pounded in my chest, but the storm inside me had settled. I walked slowly to my car, each step feeling heavier than the last. The weight of what had just happened, the confrontation, the truth finally thrown in their faces, was sinking in. I had spent years playing the role of the responsible one, the fixer, the person who held everything together while my family pulled me apart. And yet, they still had the audacity to betray me in the worst way possible, convinced I would simply take it like I always had. But not this time. I slid into the driver's seat, exhaled sharply, and pulled out my phone. Matt's name flashed on the screen, and I answered immediately. You good? His voice was steady, calm. Better than ever, I replied, gripping the wheel. Did they get the final notice? There was a short pause, then a low chuckle. Oh yeah, it hit them like a freight train. Your parents have 3 weeks to settle the lawsuit with the buyer, or they're going to court. And Jessica? He let out a whistle. She's got bigger problems. I frowned. What do you mean? Matt sighed. Turns out she didn't just rack up gambling debts, she took out loans. And not from a bank. These are the kind of people who don't send polite reminders. I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. Jessica had always been reckless, always careless, but this was on a different level. How bad is it? Bad enough that she's running out of time. If she doesn't come up with the money soon, well, let's just say she's in serious danger. I exhaled slowly, drumming my fingers against the steering wheel. A few months ago, I would have immediately asked how I could help. I would have found a way to fix it. But now? She's on her own, I said simply. For the next few days, there was nothing but silence. No calls, no messages. Maybe they finally realized there was nothing they could say to justify what they had done. Maybe they thought if they ignored it long enough, I'd come crawling back, ready to forgive them like always. Then, on the 4th day, my mother finally cracked. My phone buzzed 6 times in a row before a voicemail popped up. Sweetheart, please. We made a mistake. We're still your parents. We love you. Please, just call me back. Her voice was soft, trembling, like she was the victim in all this. I stared at my phone for a long moment before setting it down unread. An hour later, a text from Dad. We can fix this. Family is more important than money. I actually laughed out loud. Funny, you only say that when you're the one losing money. Jessica, of course, was the most predictable. You ruined us. I hope you're happy. You're the selfish one, not me. I blocked her number. I had wasted enough of my life trying to be the responsible one, the fixer, the reliable sibling who would always clean up their mess. That person no longer existed. A week later, I was sitting in a quiet cafe, scrolling through apartment listings when my realtor called. So, she said, excitement in her voice. Are we ready to finalize the purchase? I looked down at the paperwork in front of me. The contract, the keys, the blank signature line. I had spent my whole life sacrificing for people who would never do the same for me. And now, for the first time, I was putting myself first. I picked up the pen and signed my name. Let's do it. 2 weeks later, I stood in the doorway of my new apartment, a fresh set of keys in my hand. It was modern, spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A fresh start. A life that was mine. I walked inside, ran my fingers over the kitchen counter, let my eyes wander over the empty space that would soon be filled with new memories, my memories, built without them. A month passed. I heard nothing from my family. Then, late one evening, an email arrived from an old family friend. Subject: Have you seen this? Attached was a news article. Local couple faces fraud allegations after illegal property sale. Daniel and Margaret Carter, longtime residents of Oak Ridge, are currently under legal scrutiny following allegations of fraudulent real estate transactions. Sources confirmed that the couple illegally transferred ownership of their eldest child's property without consent, leading to financial and legal consequences. I leaned back in my chair, rereading the words. My parents, who had spent years caring about appearances, about what the neighbors thought, about their reputation in the community, were now the center of town gossip. I closed the email and smiled. They wanted to take everything from me. Instead, they lost everything themselves. It had been a year since I last saw them. 12 months of silence. 12 months of peace. At first, I thought about them more than I wanted to admit. Not out of guilt or regret, those emotions had burned out long ago, but out of a lingering sense of disbelief. I had spent so much of my life tied to them, always the one picking up the pieces, always the one expected to sacrifice for the good of the family. And now? Now they were nothing more than ghosts. Every once in a while, I'd get an email from an old neighbor or a distant relative who had finally caught up with the gossip. Some were curious. Others were judgmental, throwing around words like family loyalty and forgiveness as if those things had ever been extended to me. I ignored every message. I owed no one an explanation. They made their choices. And I made mine. But then, exactly 1 year to the day since I walked out of their house, an email arrived in my inbox. From Jessica. I stared at the screen for a long time, my fingers hovering over the delete button. I should have ignored it. But something made me open it. Subject: please read this. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but please, just read this before you delete it. Everything is ruined. Mom and Dad lost everything. The fraud case drained them completely. They fought it at first, but you made sure there was no way out, didn't you? The house is gone. They tried to keep it, but with all the debt and legal fees, it was impossible. Mom's living in some tiny apartment on the other side of town. She works at a grocery store now, bagging groceries for people she used to invite to dinner parties. She doesn't talk to anyone. She barely goes outside. It's like she's given up. Dad had a stroke 6 months ago. He's not the same. Half the time, he doesn't even know what's going on. He just sits in that apartment, staring at the walls. Mom takes care of him, but she's exhausted. She won't admit it, but I know she resents him for all of this. For everything. And me? You already know what happened to me. I lost everything too. My car, my credit, my job. The people I owed money to didn't just go away. You knew that, didn't you? You knew what was going to happen to me, and you didn't even warn me. I paused, rubbing my temple. Warn her? Warn her about what? That she was reckless? That she had spent years gambling away her life and expecting someone else to clean up the mess? She had been warned 1,000 times. You got everything you wanted. You won. We lost. Are you happy now? Happy? I stared at the word, turning it over in my mind. I wasn't happy about what happened to them. I wasn't unhappy either. I felt nothing. Jessica had spent her entire life running from responsibility, and now she was finally forced to face the consequences of her actions. My parents had spent their lives taking and taking, convinced that I would always be there to give. Now, with nothing left to steal, they had fallen apart. It was never about winning for me. It was about freedom. I don't expect you to forgive me. I wouldn't forgive me either. But if there's anything left in you that still cares, just call Mom. Even once. She cries every night. She just wants to hear your voice. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. For years, I had waited for my mother to care about me the way she cared about Jessica. To finally see me as more than just the responsible one, the safety net, the backup plan. And now, after everything, after all the damage had been done, now she wanted to hear my voice? Where was she when I begged her to listen? Where was she when she told me to be understanding while they took what was mine? Where was she when I was standing outside of my own apartment, locked out of the life I had built? I opened the email again, rereading the last line. She just wants to hear your voice. I closed my laptop. And I never looked back. Final chapter. The aftermath of truth. After a year of silence, after finally moving on, after reclaiming my life, Jessica's email was the last thing I expected. But in a way, it was also inevitable. People like her, like my parents, never truly change. They only reach out when they need something. And now, after everything, they wanted me to fix their lives again. I didn't respond. But the message stayed with me. Later that night, I did something I hadn't done in months. I logged into Reddit. The post I had made a year ago, the one detailing everything they had done to me, was still there, buried under thousands of new stories. Curious, I scrolled through the comments. Positive comments, the people who understood. You did the right thing. They stole from you, and they paid the price. You owe them nothing. This was the most common sentiment, and it was reassuring to see. People who had been through similar things, who had also been the scapegoat in their families, understood exactly why I walked away. I love how you handled this. You didn't just get revenge, you got justice. And you got your life back. Justice. That was the word that stuck with me the most. I hadn't done any of this out of spite. I hadn't gone after them for the sake of revenge. I simply refused to let them keep taking from me. For the first time in my life, I chose myself. The best part? They did it to themselves. You didn't ruin them, they did that on their own. And that was the truth. I hadn't created their downfall. I had just stepped aside and let them fall on their own. Negative comments, the people who didn't get it. Of course, not everyone saw it that way. But they're your family. How could you just let them suffer like that? Simple. They let me suffer first. When I was struggling, when I needed their support, when I was standing outside my own apartment with nowhere to go, where were they? Now that the tables had turned, they suddenly wanted compassion? That's not how life works. You could have just helped them out a little. They were desperate. They weren't desperate when they stole from me. They weren't desperate when they forged my signature. They weren't desperate when they sold my home without a second thought. They were only desperate when they got caught. You're just as bad as them for letting them suffer. This was the comment that almost made me laugh. If walking away from people who stole from me made me a bad person, then so be it. I would rather be bad and free than be good and miserable. Final thoughts. After reading through the comments, I closed my laptop and sat in silence for a long time. There was a time when I would have agonized over these words, when I would have felt the need to justify my actions, to explain myself over and over again to people who would never understand. But now? Now I didn't care. I had my life back. I had peace. And no matter what anyone thought, I wasn't going back.